Kenner Star Wars Puzzles from 1977 to 1979.
All kids love log.
'Tis the podcast log.
Yes, log.
Of the Star Wars Collector's Archive blog. Oh.
Yes, log.
Whenever the Star Wars Collector's Archive publishes a new blog, this podcast will log its contents, interview its writers, and go deeper. It's the Kivecast Blog Log Pod.
You, sir, are a mouthful.
Relax and just take life easy for a little while. Because it's only lasts for a little while.
All right, Steve. Well, Steve, we don't have any intros to our blog log pods.
No.
So I'm not even going to ask you how you're doing, Steve. It's this urgent.
We're at extreme urgency right now.
Extreme state of urgency going back to, I don't know, I've spent, I'm preparing a new class. I'm going to be teaching in a couple weeks about Haiti. And if you could see my desk where I'm recording, I have something like 30 books here that I've been working through and preparing. And then I've been taking time off just to read and reread Ron and Scott's article on Kenner puzzles.
Yes. Oh, man. So good.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think it's kind of like the Wonder Bread, blog log pod. Like, we could sort of call it the more than you wanted to know about puzzles. But I'm really excited because this is some really great stuff. And I will also say this, Steve. At the end of the show, we are going to talk about something kind of day and date. We will be talking about the archive party because we've got a lot of stuff set up. So if you want to hear that bit, well, you know what? Just listen to Ron and Scott talk about because you know what, Steve? We're actually eventually going to get into a Star Wars scene that pertains directly to online dating. So I'll let you think about that.
Everyone, think hard.
What scene that is featured in a Kenner puzzle is in fact online dating personified? Okay, well, with that ridiculous tease in mind, let's get Ron and Scott Bradley on the show. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you took the Scott thing. I wasn't going to try that, so
yeah,
good.
And I got to switch headphones because these Do you sweat when you do the show, Steve?
Well, you've been to my house on the record-setting heat days, so I'm going to answer that you probably know it's yes.
Yeah. Oh, we haven't even talked about visiting. Oh, boy. Yeah. Oh, well, wait till you hear the next podcast about when Skye and Steve hung out in the hellscape of Los Angeles. But like, whenever I record the show, like, I get really hot and like my ears sweat and like my butt sweats, and I just anyway. So I'm gonna change because I have these like over-ear headphones, and this is not the kind of thing that people sign up for, Steve. So let's get to Scott and Ron.
Sounds good.
All right, well, after a typical comedy of errors, 15 minutes later, we are now joined by Ron Salvatore. How's it going, Ron?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
We're doing great. And also, for first time in a long time, Scott stopped yelling Bradley. How's it going, Scott?
Very well, thanks.
When's the last time we had you on?
Wow, that was one of the early... it was a long time ago. It was one of the earlier podcasts that you had.
I think it's got to be like
something like that.
Yeah, like first season, Skye. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you've been one of our most persistent and consistent fact checkers. So, and attention to detail. And today we are all about detail.
Ah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, all about puzzles. Steve, do you have a lot of feelings about puzzles?
Well, like model kits, I don't have the mental fortitude. I never did as a kid to just deal with them. Like,
but you never did a puzzle?
No, I did, but no, it's not like Tessa is obsessed with jigsaw puzzles, so she loves them. But if I tried to do one now, I'd still probably have the same challenges I did as a 5-year-old. So no, that's it's not my strength. I'll say that. But
I have many
like
of the same
collectibles.
challenges I had as when I was a 5-year-old.
That's comforting. That's good.
Now, Ron, when you wrote this, was there any nostalgia built in for you? I mean, when people read your article, and of course we're trying to hype up Ron's articles on puzzles on the Star Wars Collectors Archive, and they're just great articles. I read them a couple times today. You definitely paint a picture of what it was like buying one of these. Did you ever buy these? Do you have memories of these?
No, I don't think I ever had a Star Wars puzzle. Certainly not a Kenner one. That's kind of predates. I would have been too young probably to be of puzzle age when these came out. I think that the intro to that first article was more of just trying to get into the fact that these were among the first 4 or 5 items that would have been available. So I kind of just wanted to present that idea of what it would have been like for someone to see the first Star Wars items in stores. I think that's how that came about.
Right. It ends up sort of drifting into sort of a languid, far from heaven kind of adultery story, which is good here. But we'll try to send people to listen to it there. I mean, to read it
well,
there.
Well, remember, it would have been the only Star Wars Kenner products in '77 were the early bird envelope. I want to say Plaints, the board game, the first board game, the mauve and blue puzzles. And was Dip Dots out that early? That was about all that would have been available in '77.
Yeah.
Wow. So, yeah, I want to get into that because this is actually pretty sneaky here, Ron. In your first paragraph, and you managed to get. I had a whole thing about gazebos and puzzles, but I might actually skip past that. It was a pretty good rant, but let's stay focused on the Kenner items here. So part of what makes this an interesting article is in the first paragraph, you include links to 2 other blogs that you wrote earlier. And I would like to draw attention to those 2. I'm kind of surprising you, Ron. This is kind of this is your life, but this is your previously written blog post. And one you wrote in 2014, and that was just called A Common Misconception. Have you read that one, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when he first wrote it. It's been a while, but that was the kind of scarcity of product article. Is that what that one was? Right, and that's the real reason to think about puzzles is just to think about what was out there and why they mattered. Right. So there's just a lot of great things in that article. What do you remember of that, Ron?
That article, I think it was it's been a long-standing annoyance with me that people always sort of blame Kenner for not having toys out, like there was a screw-up or something, when it was really, I think they signed the contract in March or April, which obviously is, a month before the movie came out. So there was basically no way that Kenner could have gotten toys to market in time, so it was certainly not their fault. So I think that was the idea. And at the same time, Charles Lippincott was posting a lot of early Kenner licensing history, so I think I may have tied it into some stuff he was posting. Charles is still out there posting his stuff, so you can go check out his Facebook page. But so that was the whole common misconception thing, was that Kenner screwed up or dropped the ball, when really it was just kind of the luck of the draw that they didn't. I don't think they were offered the license and had a real opportunity of it until the spring of '77. So that was what that was about. Or maybe I think discussions probably started somewhere around Toy Fair, which would have been February or something, but they didn't really have the license until spring.
Okay, so that's the common misconception, and you should read more about that. And Ron also quotes pretty extensively from Sansweet Screen to Collectible, and to hear more about that, you should listen to our interview with Sansweet. And actually, because we have Scott here, and just because why not? Do you know how that would have worked with Irwin being connected to Kenner? Like, did they automatically get whatever licenses Kenner did, or did they pick and choose? How did that? Do you know how that worked, or am I just putting you on the spot?
Overall, I think because Irwin had that joint venture with Kenner, anything that Kenner made, I think it was up to Irwin to decide whether they wanted to carry it or not, based on if there was any, like interest, like pre-sales at like Toy Fair and things like that occurred earlier in the year. But I think it was more up to Irwin. Like, this is an example. They had the opportunity to release the Indiana Jones line in Canada.
Okay.
But I'd asked the question actually of one of the Irwin brothers, and he had mentioned that there wasn't enough interest in it to garner the line in Canadian packaging, but apparently they did bring some in, but in American packaging for like some smaller orders. So I think it was basically up to them, depending on whether their clients had shown interest in like at Toy Fair, and they also had a showroom that customers could come in and take a look at the line that was coming up and say, oh yeah, I want that, but I don't really have any interest in that because I don't think it's going to sell.
Which actually is going to tie pretty nicely into the second part of this podcast, because there are going to be Canadian puzzles based on the Kenner puzzles, but they will not be made by Irwin. But Steve, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I just wanted to, I'm really proud of myself for bringing Scott into the conversation so early. That's some expert hosting here. 8 years in, I'm starting to learn how to do it, Steve.
So. You've done this before, haven't you?
And then. Also, in this first paragraph, well, after you talk about some guy trying to bang my mom, seriously, you guys have to read it. There's a tale of desperation in here. And then you also mentioned that in addition to product being scarce, there was also the board game, and I had forgotten that you wrote a blog about the board games, even though it was just
it was a mean-spirited blog about how much I dislike board games.
Yeah, what is it? Okay, did you know, Steve, that Ron hates board games?
I kind of got the gist of it from this, but
what happened to you,
I don't
Ron?
really hate them. It was just kind of, you need an in, right? You need something to make your post interesting, so that was sort of the angle of that whole thing, which is more or less a joke, but still.
It is true. I've never played a board game with you, Ron.
Yeah, let's not kind of avoid that. I don't remember as a kid hating board games, but it was definitely, I do remember, like, oh, let's play a board game. Well, let's not, actually. Let's go do something worthwhile rather than sit here and play this board game. But I don't think the only Star Wars board game that I can recall playing is the Parker Brothers one with the skiff.
Right.
And I remember
the Sarlacc
maybe
pit?
playing it. Yeah, I remember maybe playing it once, and that was maybe it. I think my friend of mine had it. But other than that, I don't recall. I did have the E.T. board game, but again, I only, usually, I'd get them for Christmas or something, and we'd play them one time, and then that would be that. And it was like, all right, let's put that in the closet and never look at it again.
Add it to the stack.
Well, it's funny because I really enjoyed this article as well, and Steve and I are working on kind of a super secret project with board games, which we might be able to unveil in the next couple months. Steve, is that right?
I guess so. Yeah, we could maybe over the next couple months.
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen, it means that I forgot. So we're not going to talk too much about board games here. Although it is one of my I'm just going to drop that, Steve. This is blog logged, okay? We don't need to talk about stupid things that are boring. But I do want to get to my gazebo story, Steve. Can I tell my gazebo story?
I think we might as well let you now, because if the pressure mounts, it could get worse.
It could. We haven't even told them about the dating app thing. But anyways. So my memory of, I love these puzzles because I have these really bad memories of being forced to live in New Hampshire for the summer. So my parents would just ship me off to live with my godmother, who's a very nice old lady, but she was very old. And she had no cable, obviously. This is the 80s, and she would just watch T.J. Hooker all day. And she'd have 3 or 4 friends named Grace who'd come over. I would eat my favorite food, which was Spam sandwiches with mayonnaise and the jelly from the can on the white bread. And there wasn't really much to do except sit in this gazebo, and it was really hot, and there would be all these bees, and all she had was these jigsaw puzzles. And so I would just be miserable and like depressed and like doing these puzzles, not because I liked them, but just because they were something to do. And I would always get them stuck to my elbow, because it was hot and sweaty. And the subjects were always...
Maybe that was the spam goo, the spam jelly.
Man, this podcast really took a turn for the worse.
You haven't been on in a while. It's a lot of this. And the thing is that the subject of the puzzles was always like a rose bush or like a picture of a gazebo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, those are the puzzles I remember doing.
A picture of your own summer prison.
A decorative scene, like a proto Bob Ross scene.
Yeah.
Now, if I had any of these puzzles, I mean any of these puzzles, even the lamest of the Kenner puzzles, I would have been the happiest kid. I would have done it, broke it apart, broke it apart over and over again.
It would have healed your human spirit, that's for sure.
It would have. So that's the way I want to get into this, not just with some creepy guy trying to bang my mom, not just with hating board games, but with the idea that these puzzles were the only Star Wars thing, and I would argue the only good puzzles ever made. So Ron, what is the story behind the Kenner jigsaw puzzles?
Oh, the story? I don't know the story. I mean, basically, like I mentioned, they were some of the earliest products out, and that was because they're made of basically, paper or paper products. So it's easy to produce. You don't need to produce tooling like you do for a plastic toy. So they were out pretty quick. The original issues, there was 4 puzzles, and they were in blue and purple or pink. I called it electric mauve because it is kind of a mauve color.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's a Hendrix color, no doubt. They're definitely sort of psychedelic-looking boxes, and obviously Kenner abandoned those boxes after a while, and they made the puzzles black and silver, just like the rest of the line. So those early puzzles have a distinctive look to them.
You've made like this great list of all the possible things, of all the possible variations. So I'm just trying to figure it out to go methodically. So there were 4 first ones, and those came in either purple or mauve, electric mauve, or blue. And you don't know if there's any rarity difference in those, or which one of those came out first. That was just the beginning.
You mean, I think the blue and the mauve ones came out simultaneously. I don't think there was an earlier one, not that I'm aware of. But and I'm not really aware of any serious variations on those, but those were the earliest ones. They're not... I think the common conception would be that they're rarer, but if you look at eBay, those things are around. I don't think they're hard to find. So even though they're early, I wouldn't say they're scarce or anything like that. I mean, Kenner, it was the only Star Wars stuff available. There's 3 or 4 products, so I think they pumped those things out, in late '77, and so I don't think they're rare at all. But yeah, after that, in '78, they re-released those in black and silver boxes, and then they released other... Well, no, those became Series 1, right, in 1978. And then there was also a Series 2 in the same year, and those were 4 entirely new puzzles, new pictures. So the line was successful enough where they had actually 4 series of 140-piece and 500-piece puzzles, all with different pictures, through 1979, and then they also did a couple of 1,000-piece puzzles and a couple of 1,500-piece puzzles. So it's an extensive line. I mentioned in the article, I can't imagine that any other movie has ever had more puzzles tied into it. That's a lot, I mean, it's like whatever that is, 20 or something like that.
20 of them, yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot of puzzles.
It is, and it's what I like about this article is how precise it is. I mean, it's really just about Kenner. It's really just about the first movie, because Kenner didn't make puzzles past Star Wars. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they passed on to, was it Parker?
Yeah,
I mean, there was the Jedi. They didn't do any Empire puzzles, but then in Jedi there was those red and silver ones. Which, what company made those?
Craftsmasters.
Was it?
Yeah, because Steve, didn't we talk about this last month?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, well, one of them, yeah, we had as our unloved, but I think it might have been labeled or distributed through Parker in Canada. Is that right, Scott?
I think there were Craftmaster up here too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
And,
Jedi Craftmasters did them.
I'm sorry, did I just get...
can't remember
I'm
what
not
the other
used to
one-
getting things right on this show. This is a really weird feeling. I feel really
Yeah,
off.
I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, that sounds right. The Craftmasters did the Jedi puzzles, but there was none for Empire.
But there's no Empire puzzles?
No.
That is just
that
weird.
I'm aware of. In England, it was Waddington's did their own line of puzzles, and it was a completely different line.
Right, and those are all special, and I think we probably need to spend a lot of time with those because those feature the toys
Yeah, that's a whole
themselves.
nother blog post, but that was the English licensee.
Right.
But yeah, as far as I know, there's no Empire. Maybe there's a foreign one. Duncan would know, but off the top of my head, there's no American Empire puzzles.
It was just too dark and gritty, I mean, who wants a puzzle of that?
It's weird because, like I mentioned in the article, Steve Sansby mentions it from concept to screen to collectible. They sold a ton of those things. It was one of the, just in terms of numbers, they were cheap items, so I'm sure the gross take wasn't that huge. But in numbers, the puzzles were one of the biggest sellers. So, and they sold. I mean, you go on eBay, there's still tons of loose ones. So they sold a ton of them. So it's interesting that there was no Empire puzzle line. It's kind of a weird quirk.
Yeah. Maybe they were trying to figure out the licensing, or who knows. But
yeah, I think Kenner kind of pulled back, and a lot of the poster sets got handed off to Craftmasters around that time, and Kenner stopped doing poster sets. So, and they eventually handed off board games to Parker. So maybe Kenner just felt like, well, why bother? We can just sell more action figures or something. And no one else picked it up. But you think someone? I mean, there seems to be money to be made there. So I don't know. It's just an oddity that there's no Empire puzzles.
it is, and also in my research, which was limited, but Kenner didn't make other puzzles, did they?
I think that's accurate. I mean, I'd have to go back and search through my catalogs, but I don't think prior to Star Wars, I don't think there was $6 Million Man puzzles or anything like
they
that.
were,
Off
but
the
they were
top of
made
my
by
head.
they were made by Whitman, and
Yeah, but I mean Kenner ones.
Right.
I have all those catalogs. I don't recall seeing puzzles. Remember, Star Wars was a big deal for Kenner, so they made a lot of products that they didn't normally do. The plush items were a little bit off of their normal range. I mean, they did other plush things, but it was a little bit I don't know if they ever tried to make a cute thing. I mean, there's Munchmates and stuff like that, but plush was a little bit off base. They weren't a board game company, so I think that's even discussed from concept to screen to collectible, that they didn't really know about board games, and so that was one of the reasons that maybe I've never played that first Star Wars board game, but I've heard it's not that great. They did their best, but Parker was the board game expert, and Kenner really wasn't. But I think they tried to keep all that stuff because they wanted to have that big boost from that movie. But then when they realized, I'm speculating, but then when they realized that really making all that extra stuff was just taking away from the bread and butter, which was the action figures, they kind of scaled back the line. So even they stopped doing radio-controlled stuff and electronic games, all that stuff they stopped doing after the first few years. And I think puzzles was part of that. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think the early, late 70s stuff is probably the most fun to collect, at least for me, is because that's the weirdest Kenner stuff. I mean, there's just a bunch of weird stuff that they never came back to. I mean, like I said, the remote control toys, the vans, and all that stuff pretty much went by the wayside. I mean, they even cut out the die cast and the large size figures after a while.
Right.
So.
Right.
Well, this has been a lot of talk without actually talking about the puzzles themselves, Steve.
Should we pick some highlights here?
Yeah, well, I think maybe, series by series, right? Because basically these are just production photos or publicity photos just turned into jigsaw puzzles. And what's amazing is that you would think that every image that you see is just, oh, of course, that's the standard image. And I mean, the Chewbacca and Han Solo, okay, that is the Chewbacca and Han Solo image that you've seen 1,000 times. But then there's others that are just a little bit off and a little bit weird. And then Ron made the mistake of claiming that like very few of these were ever used in other Kenner items, and you guys both like jumped down his throat today on email. It was really funny.
Yeah, well, I wasn't taking into consideration all the cropping and stuff, but yeah, you're right. That's wrong that the Tusken Raider is the only one, because the Luke is clearly, it's flipped on the blister card, and then as Scott mentioned, the R2 it looks like the same as the one on the blister card, but obviously it's been heavily modified, and then the R5D4 is zoomed in and cropped. But yeah, I mean, I didn't even look. I just was like, oh, the Tusken Raiders, that's the one on the blister card. But there's other ones that were used in modified form.
Well, Ron, the key is you have to never ever change it. The Luke one is a great example of maybe the most pleasing, just because it's just Luke looking off into the sunset. Although it is weird seeing him flipped or looking the right way, because he's just like, it's just wrong. Like I want to flip him over the other way. And what were you going to say, Steve?
Well, yeah. I mean, just with that one being that image that everyone is so in love with in terms of the action figures, to kind of like, this is a much more affordable way to get that image than on a 12-back. But yeah.
Because I bet you could get that and put it in a acrylic box, and it would look like a nice thing, right? No?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Scott and Ron are the wrong people to talk to about acrylic boxes, Steve.
Well, I think Scott mentioned in email, and I think he's right that, and also I think it might be mentioned in the quote from the Kenner guy in the article that, weirdly as it may seem, that probably some people don't realize this, but there was just not a lot of good production stills available to licensees at the time. So, like you mentioned, that Han and Chewbacca pictures everywhere. It shows up on trading cards and all that stuff. So Kenner was probably limited in what they had to work with. So everything, these photos show up in other places within the Kenner line, like zoomed and cropped and flipped and airbrushed, and they show up on other stuff. So, I mean, all the pictures here are probably familiar to Star Wars fans from a variety of contexts. Like it's almost funny. Like you think they're sitting there and they have this hot licensee, and then they have like 20 photos to use.
Yeah,
figure it out.
Yeah, I was just looking at the space battle one and realizing how problematic a puzzle that is. It's a good thing. I know I will never try and put that together because you have all this black space that would just be impossible to figure out.
It's mostly black space.
Yeah.
It's like, how much more black could this be? And the answer is none. None's more black.
Someone told Steve Sansweet when he was doing interviews that was a screw-up of theirs. That they put that puzzle out because that was one of the few images they had, and then after they did it, someone pointed out that, how difficult that would be. It's all black, So.
Well, that was like when in the 90s when Pizza Hut released the pizza boxes that you were supposed to color in, and they had one that was just Darth Vader next to a Stormtrooper.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So that's a little too modern. But one thing you didn't mention, Ron, was the spelling of C-3PO. They spell it.
It's probably mentioned on the chart. I didn't get into all those. Yeah, a lot of these on the Canadian ones too. The spelling is wrong, but maybe I didn't mention it on the chart.
Well, that's just another amazing thing that they have this hot property and they know they're going to sell millions, and they're like, "How do you spell C-3PO?" I don't know. Just spell C-3PO. However you think it is, that'll be good enough.
Yeah, there's like a space between 3 and PO.
Yeah,
that's right.
Like Italian or something. 3PO.
Speaking of mistakes, I think my favorite is the image of the victory celebration, which is that's the 3rd series.
So I was editing and I realized that we didn't properly explain this puzzle before talking about it in depth. So this is a puzzle from this 3rd series of the Kenner Star Wars line, and it's probably the most interesting. It's a 500-piece puzzle set, and it's a scene from the Rebels ceremony and celebration at the end of Star Wars. But it's kind of an unusual photo. Going from right to left, there's C-3PO, behind him an unknown rebel, Next to him, another unknown rebel in a hat, R2-D2, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia. Behind her, an unknown rebel, Han Solo, General Dundada, Chewbacca. Behind him, an unknown rebel. And then 2 other very strange-looking rebels that I've never seen before. They are described by Ron as being Space Force Thomas Jefferson and Space Force Steve Jobs, which I think are both pretty good descriptions of who these people are. And this is particularly remarkable because there's a sticker on the front that says, "Pictorial content of puzzle inside does not include these 2 characters." So the Space Force is not in the puzzle. Okay, now I've described it. Let's hear us talk about it.
So they have the medal ceremony. That's series 3, right?
Yeah, it's in the 3rd series from I think around 79.
Yeah,
it's called Victory Celebration with an exclamation point.
Right. Yeah. So they have all the exclamations like the top cards because they need a little extra. But you have on the box, the initial release, you have the kind of family photo here of the guys getting their medals, and you have the rebels in the background. But there's a sticker over 2 of the rebels that they're not actually in the pictorial content of the puzzle, just as a warning. And the characterizations here. I mean, Ron, you've written some funny stuff on the archive, but describing this one guy as the Space Force Thomas Jefferson, that I don't know. That is my.
Well, Yehuda called those guys Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which I think is pretty much hilarious too.
That works just as well, man. But
he does look like Thomas Jefferson, and I don't know. The deal is that they use an uncropped photo on the box, and then the puzzle apparently, someone with some degree of intelligence at Kenner realized that those guys suck, and they cut them out of the puzzle. But then someone didn't tell the guy doing the package that they weren't cut out, and so they're standing there, and then so they put a sticker on the early issues of it to say, hey, these guys aren't actually on the puzzle, so, don't decide not to buy it based on these 2 ugly guys standing here because they're not actually in there. But that just kind of leads to the question, like, who are those guys? And because I'm 90% sure that if you go to Wikipedia or what was the name of that card game that
the Decipher card game?
Yeah, the Decipher card game. I'm sure those guys have extensive backstories where they're like criminals that have escaped. They're smugglers or something who escaped. A pornography ring in the Celestin district or something. These long things that they come up with. So there's probably some interesting story about who those guys are within the Star Wars universe, but obviously just 2 extras or something who are standing back there, and both of them are just like the most boring-looking individuals you could imagine.
Yeah, the guy really does look like he's straight out of the Hall of Presidents at Disneyland, though. Like he's about to just start talking about the history of the rebellion,
Yeah, and someone who was really keen on Star Wars licensing. I mean, I guess I'm pretty good, but maybe Duncan or someone who knows more about other stuff. Was that photo? I mean, how often has that photo been published, and how often was it cropped?
Right.
In the movie, are they visible, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know any of that.
Okay, Skye here doing some work in the editing, trying to find whether or not Thomas Jefferson and Steve Jobs were actually in the movie Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Now, if we look at the throne room scene, right, or the celebration scene, from a distance, it's actually very clear, and you'll see this in the enhanced version, that they are not there at all from the distance shot. So what you have is mostly the people with the helmets and then people with the baseball hats, but you do not have these 2 guys off to the side. When you actually get closer and you see where Luke is, like from behind, you see the first shot of the guy with the mustache, who we will be talking about fairly soon. When you get closer to pictures of C-3PO, you see the guy with the mustache and 3 other people with hats who look very random. And I don't know if it's just me, but they actually look like they might be Peruvian. Guatemalan. I don't know. Maybe the scene was actually shot in Guatemala. I forget if this part of the scene was shot there. No, it wasn't. I think I'm just reading into it. And then when you look at the famous shot of all of them together, first of all, it's flipped. in the puzzle. In the puzzle, Chewbacca's on the left, but in the movie, Chewbacca's on the right. Same thing, flipped with Luke, Han, Leia. Luke, Han, 3PO, and R2D2. Obviously, Leia is right in the dead center, and you do not see Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, Space Force Jefferson anywhere. So there's your answer. Maybe they were just in the puzzle. I don't know. Okay, back to the show.
That would be an interesting question.
I would like to put this out there as a general call that anybody who can tell it, like, we need more information about the victory celebration.
Hello?
Hello?
Skye?
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Skye?
No, I'm here.
Yeah, I
think we lost
may
Skye.
have.
What? No, you didn't.
Skye.
What? No, I'm here.
This is killing me, though. I wish he'd just finish his sentence.
But I'm here.
A general call, and then it just dropped out.
See, we don't know is if he's still going on right now.
I am still going.
He's still going. I don't know.
I am.
We'll be going all night. Are you guys still there? You guys still there?
Why are you guys making fun of me? I can hear you the whole time. I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you
I
now.
can, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking the whole time. Just in the middle of it, you guys are like, "Oh, he's not here." Do you guys like coordinate this? Oh boy.
We cut you out like those guys, like Kenner cut those guys out of the puzzle.
Yeah, really, that's it.
Well, then in that case, what I was saying is that is what we're talking about. And I might have to go in just to cut this in later so that it's very clear. But is the most interesting puzzle is a 500-piece puzzle that includes a picture of the victory celebration at the end of the movie. Yeah, you all hear? You all hear? You all hear me?
Yeah.
And it's this picture that I've never seen ever, because I see it and I think, of course I've seen this picture because I've seen the victory celebration, but this is the weirdest picture. I mean, C-3PO is putting his hand on R2-D2, and some weird Wilford Brimley Attack on Endor or something dude is behind him. He's got like a walrus mustache. He belongs with
these other guys, yeah.
Yeah, and then next to him, it looks like some like gunnery sergeant. And then Luke looks like he's out of focus, and he's wearing his yellow jacket, and Leia looks kind of stoned and confused. Next to her is another person in a hat. Harrison Ford is not here. I mean, he is very clearly just completely checked out. He isn't posed properly. His shoulders are sloped slightly down. General Dondada is right behind there. Another person with a hat. So we have all these anonymous people, and I did look it up on Wikipedia, and none of these people on this dais are there. So how do we find out? And then you have Chewbacca, and then you have these two magical people who, I mean, there's plenty of I don't understand how this sticker. So the exact quote from the sticker, it's placed over their crotches, and it says, "Pictorial content of puzzle inside does not include these two characters."
That's so great.
So what I want, Ron, you know lots of people at Kenner. You have to track this down. Did they ever get a letter from someone saying, "I put together this puzzle and I couldn't find these two people"? And
no one's going to remember that, man. You have to find someone with a super memory for that one, but yeah, I don't know.
All right, well then put it out to Fluffy. Maybe Fluffy has that letter in his.
I'm
in his
guessing
files.
that someone just picked up on it. That were like, oh, darn, we didn't crop the image on here. I bet they caught it before it went out, and just rather than make new boxes, they just put that sticker on there. Would be my guess.
And then these were made in the States, weren't they?
I don't know. Scott might know. I mean, there's one. Some of them say made in Canada. Like, I don't know exactly. I wouldn't be surprised if they were made in the
it's weird
States.
because there's some of the American ones that have manufactured in Canada on them, and then conversely, there's a couple of Canadian ones that have made in USA. So it's really strange. There must be some relationship with like the Parker USA and Parker Canada that they kind of crossed the border and did work for each other.
Huh. Yeah, so in any event, it's not like it has to go to Hong Kong or China or something.
No.
So these stickers must have just been put on at the factory while they were being put out, I suppose.
Yeah.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, the weird thing to me is that the weird fat guy on the right, the Wizard of Oz looking guy, horse of a different color guy with the weird mustaches, he's familiar to me. Like, there might even be an action figure or something of that guy,
He was
for all I know.
He was in the Nelvana cartoon.
Oh,
Okay.
Scott later pointed out that this character is in the holiday special as well.
So I mean, I'm familiar with that guy.
Ah.
The two guys on the left, Space Force Thomas Jefferson, and the That'll Do Pig or whatever the other guy's name is. Like those two guys are
James
not
Cromwell?
familiar to me at all. Like I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing either of them. Maybe the bald guy, but Thomas Jefferson. This is the only place I've seen him.
No, do you know what they look like? They look like they are time travelers from Battlestar Galactica, who just like wandered onto the Star Wars set and were like, "Oh, wait a minute, we got to get back to the future." Because like,
I mean, that guy's hair is just righteous, though. Like I don't know what's going on with that, but it's just very weird. Anyway, someone out there who's a bigger, fan of all this extended universe stuff can probably think, oh yeah, there's a novel about that guy, and but I'd be curious to know, like, if that guy shows up or either of those guys show up on other products.
I will say now that I think I do need to start a petition to Hasbro to make that guy an action figure, because I would proudly, oh man. I need to get this puzzle. That's the other thing I've come to conclude.
Yeah, well, they're not super rare, and I don't think we've talked about it yet. But the box was corrected, so you can get it either with the sticker and the two weird guys in there, or you can get it without the two guys.
Obviously you need it with the two guys. So they remade it. And so, I mean, so the one with the sticker is not rare. They're all. It's not that hard to find.
It may be a little rarer, but it's not like it's kind of like the Salacious C-3PO card, where it's not necessarily rare. It's just kind of everybody knows about it, and it's something people want. So I don't think you're gonna have to search for years or pay a lot of money to get that one with the sticker.
Okay, yeah, because it is absolutely the top of my list of weird things that Ron told me about that I need to buy. Because these guys are just great, and I
every once in a while someone will turn one up and I'll get an email and it'll be like, hey, I found this prototype of this. I'm like, no, that's just an error. It's out there.
Pig and Jefferson.
Yeah. Oh man.
And then another one of the early ones. Should we get to the thing that I was teasing, Steve? That's completely nothingness, or should we save that for another episode?
Which thing? You teased a couple things.
The online dating.
We might as well get to it now.
Okay, so I realized that because as you guys know, I'm pretty single, and I mean not so much right now, but anyways. I've done a lot of online dating, and I was looking at one of these images that was used on the puzzle, and I realized this scene is actually a lot like online dating. And I'm of course talking about, what scene do you think I'm talking about, Steve?
Let's see. I gotta pull up the images here. Not
the trash compactor.
I figured not.
Not Obi-Wan versus Darth.
Is it the R5D4?
Yes. It's online dating is a lot.
At least you didn't say the Tusken Raider riding the Banta.
Yes. No, I wasn't gonna. No, I had narrowed it down to.
I think Fluffy has a story about that, but no, because it's like you show up and usually the offerings aren't that good, and then there's something you really want, which is like the ability to speak bocce, and like you ask, and then they talk about a whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't matter. And then you find the absolute right one, and then you go for it, and then it absolutely blows up. And then the one that you actually wanted doesn't have a bad motivator and is right there, and you figure, I guess I'll just go for it anyways, and then it kind of works out. But
then at night it runs away from you and goes into the desert in search of some old man.
That's it. That's it there.
That's it. So R5D4 is that girl who you dated maybe once or twice, but then just decided didn't work out on the online dating. So I've got a lot of R5D4s in my past, and I don't harbor any ill will towards them. I am R5D4 for many women. You know what I mean? It's okay. Well, if you like or dislike that, email me at scottbradley.ca.com. All right, Steve, get us back on track.
Well, okay, so how much more do we want to get into before we go for the Canadian side of things? There's a couple more puzzles, but most of these are replicated in the Canadian boxes, but the Canadian ones have a lot that these don't. So is there any other standouts for the American versions?
I don't have. I mean, you can read the article. There's the chart that has the little variations and whatnot. So
yeah.
Which is like the placement of the Kenner logo is different. So if you were trying to put together a run of the Luke Farm Boy puzzle, you could see that there's a blue one, there's a electric mauve, there's a black one without a Kenner logo, there's one with a Kenner logo. So you can see all those things. There's actually another scene of the buying of the droids,
right?
Which is before the R5D4. That actually kind of looks like Plenty of Fish, which if you guys, that's a bad scene.
Yeah, and we talked about, there's the larger sizes,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's an extensive line, and some of them, I mean, I don't know how, every collector's different, but personally I always wanted them sealed, so I tried to find those, and some of the larger ones can be a little bit tough to find if you're looking for them in sealed condition.
Yes.
But
by the end,
it's a good set to try to put together. The Canadian ones, which I'll let Scott talk about because he's probably more of a expert than I am. But I mean, it's a line you can. The Canadian ones are rare, but the American ones you can pretty much put together the collection without too much expense. I like them. I think it's a cool line, so I would encourage people to seek those out.
Yeah, and same with the Canadian ones. They're pretty well. They're pretty easy to find.
Yeah, and before we really get to full Canada. I mean, the images, like the image of Luke and Leia about to cross the ravine, I've never seen that image before.
Yeah, that one stood out to me as something that I don't remember seeing either.
Okay.
It's actually like non-iconic. It's like a non-iconic.
It's a
from that scene.
Right. It's a secondary, beyond the contact sheet, be the one that they didn't choose for the program.
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if you search around if it's on some other Kenner product somewhere. But yeah, it's certainly different. I mean, it's almost like an in-action shot, which usually those stills are not like that.
It looks sort of like they're stepping into a disco too, like the way that Luke is stepping in and the lights from the Death Star pop out. You definitely correctly note that it's maybe the only vintage item to feature the Bantha. I mean, right? I mean, what?
Oh, well, it's called the Banta on there, which makes it sound like a Bantu tribesman or something. But I don't know. I mean, that image is on some trading cards and stuff, I think, but I don't know if Kenner at that period, I don't know if they really had any other Banta stuff off the top of my head. Later on, I think they used that on maybe a Power of the Force map, one of those maps. But I don't think it's on any of the early products that Kenner did off the top of my head anyway.
And then my final favorite one is the image of the Stormtrooper in the corridor has always been one of my favorites, just because it's so trippy and weird, and for some reason they just call it Corridor of Lights, which if that sounds like something I would have done in the Gazebo, like,
exactly. I
would not expect there to be an awesome Stormtrooper right there.
It's a weird image. I don't know that's a good question for someone like Pete Filmer too, because I don't know if that was an early marketing image, but I know towards maybe 79, I think Factors has it somewhere on a poster. Kenner used it on that doll that Steve mentioned earlier, the large size figure.
Yeah.
And then it shows up on a Kenner catalog as well. But it's a composite image, I'm pretty sure. I think that's not like someone somewhere cut out a picture of a Stormtrooper and pasted them into that corridor because it's odd looking.
Right.
But I don't know what the story is.
Like in the part where Luke's running down to get Leia, and he turns around after Han calls him. Isn't that just like a shot from the set, and they just kind of drew the laser in.
Yeah, I don't know. You could be right. It's weird looking to me. It doesn't look like he's standing on the.
It looks like he's been
correctly.
he's been added later. Just
I always
strangely.
thought it was like a made image, but maybe I don't know. Someone.
Because one of the top cards I think has that, right? But there's just no. Or is the lights? Is the blast in it? I can't remember. Because I've seen pictures of it as well, and I was imagining that it was probably taken on set, and then they just kind of drew the laser blasting. Because I've seen other photos of it without the laser blast, with him just kind of holding the blaster.
Interesting.
Well, I'm making a grand declaration, Steve.
Okay.
I have been the king of the 48 Bs. I've been known as a Chewbacca collector. I am now going to make it my goal to collect every single repetition of this bizarre image. Because
you're going to be a corridor of lights focus collector?
Yes,
that's it.
Because I remember this image, like it's an upsetting image. Like the way that it looks, like it's amazingly, like it's like a fractal. It's very centered. You know, compositionally, it's not that good, but it's
almost kaleidoscopic in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I bet that if you had a run of this image in multiple formats, multiple sizes, it would look really cool. So I currently have nothing in my corridor of light focus, but I'm going to track them down.
This is what you need to do. You need to have 2 separate rooms, and then you can show people around. You'd be like, this is the Museum, and they'll look around, and then you'd be like, and here is, and then you open the door, the corridor of lights, and then people will walk in, and you'll see all of your items that you've collected on the walls, and then you'll hit a button, and it'll be like music and lights flashing on the walls.
That's right. That's a plan. So anyways, you guys can help me out. You space freaks listening, help me out. If you see anything, send me an email, scottbradley@canada.com. And but I'm not kidding about this. I'm going to be tracking down the corridor of light images, so this will be fun. Okay, I think, Steve, with that nonsense, we talked about online dating, we talked about gazebos. I'm just looking at my notes of stuff here. Okay, let's talk about Canada, Steve.
Heading north then.
Know yourself, know your worth. My actions being louder than my words. How you sold, I been still sold down to earth. Wanna do it, we can do it on the turf. Oh Lord.
All right, I think Scott's going to take the wheel here because this is his territory.
Similar to what Ron was saying, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about maybe like the history of Irwin, or just want to jump right into the puzzles.
So it wasn't Irwin, it was Parker. But is Parker and Irwin connected?
That's right. So since these were like Kenner products, Irwin, same with the early plush items where it all seemed to be done by Kenner in the USA. Up here, what the contract was with was Irwin, and then Irwin had a like kind of a smaller subsection called Kenner Products Canada, that it essentially was used as a distributor throughout Canada for all Kenner items. But there's some items that Irwin didn't produce themselves, like plush and like the games and things like that, or the puzzles, I guess, specifically. So what they did was, like, say, Regal, they contracted out to Regal to do the early plush, like the Chewbacca, the R2-D2, and the Jawa that Kenner USA didn't pick up on, but we took on up here. Same with the puzzles. The puzzles, they just contracted out to Parker to do them on their behalf. So it's like a Parker item and not a Kenner item. Mm-hmm. So overall, I guess the first years, 77, 78, we had released in Ron's article, they had the 140 piece and the 500 piece puzzles. We never ventured past that into 79 with the 1,000 and 1,500 pieces, so we just kind of stopped at the 140 and 500s. But then we actually expanded the line on those 3 exclusive puzzles, the Luke and C-3PO, the Space Battle, I think it's not Space Battle, it's, was it Space Battle?
Death Star?
Death Star. Yeah, Death Star, and the Stormtroppers. So
now, what's a Stormtrooper, Scott?
The Stormtroppers, the same as a Banta. Quality control was not so great. It's almost like you had some guy in Parker saying, "Nah, this puzzle's not, or this movie's not going to go anywhere. Nobody's going to really care about this after a year. You know, who cares about spell checking?" So, little did we know, 40 years later, we're still collecting these things. But, I think what I imagine may have happened was that Kenner in the U.S. had wanted to expand the 140 and 500 lines, and they elected not to take these images and kept going with the 1,000 and 1,500 set pieces. But we had actually picked up on those three and said, okay, well, we'll release them as like 140s and 500s, but we didn't go beyond those at all for the Star Wars line.
The second exclusive one, it's the only untitled puzzle in the entire line, which I kind of like. It's just Luke repairing 3PO, and I think Ron says it's the most boring image of all of them, but
yeah.
Actually,
I think the title is on that. It's in the bottom left, but it's in black on top of the...
Is it? Oh, you know
there's
what?
Like a little... it just says Luke C-3PO, I think. Or Luke,
oh, I see it. It's like hard to see. Yeah, you know what? Another mistake. I don't have that one. It's hard to see on that photo.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it says Luke and C-3PO. Yeah, that's pretty hard to find.
But, and then, the third one was the 500, and that's just called Death Star. And it's got this crazy composite image that, I realized I'd seen it before, and the way I recognized it was on a Kenner catalog, but that was the only 500 piece, right? That Kenner did? They're exclusive?
The 500, yeah.
Yeah. Then all the Canadian ones were either the blue or the purple as well. They didn't do the black boxes. Is that right?
No, I think it seemed to what the persona of Irwin was. They were a real cost-saving company, and since we had lower population in Canada, and then so consequently they wouldn't be making as many of these products in terms of volume. So in order to keep costs low, they just reused the same photo year over year. So throughout 77 and 78, we didn't update to the black and silver like Kenner type design. They just kept with the regular blue and the, what was it, hot pink or whatever?
Electric Mauve.
Thing.
Ron is really trying to get this off the ground. Electric Mauve.
That's it. It's like a new paint that Sherwin-Williams is going to be selling in the future now. Yeah, so they just kept with those, and then we never updated the boxes.
Okay. Should we get into the food tie-in, Skye?
No, because obviously it's been too long since I've said something no one cares about. We need to talk about the French on these puzzles, Steve.
See, I was going to see if I could get by without...
No, you thought you could go by just because you can always tell when I'm looking on eBay and when I'm not paying full attention to the show, because I was looking on eBay for Empire Strikes Back puzzles, and I found one for $4,000 that someone says... Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back puzzle with penis. and I've been looking at this picture for like 3 minutes trying to figure out like where's the penis that he's talking about. And if you look at Han's pinky finger, it looks a little penile, but I think this guy is just hoping. In his description, he says, this is rare. There are probably only a few in existence. So, but that's from the modern. So now that I'm back with us, first of all, Ron, you said that casse-tête means headache.
I don't know. I put it into Translate and I got head pain or something like that.
Yeah, it actually means break head. Like casse is like casse, and then tête is head. So it's like a head breaker, almost like a jaw breaker, but for your head, and that's what they call jigsaw puzzles in French.
That's applicable for me.
Go.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yes. For me, it's boredom somehow reinforcers. And then another great little piece, just because a lot of the Canadian stuff is great when they have to figure out what to translate and what not to. Mm-hmm. So, like interlocking pieces, they translate as morceaux sans boiton, which is like pieces which interlock with each other, but it's just way too literal of a translation, and it's frankly humorous. Parker translates the fun and game name to pour joie et jeu, which means for joy and games, but that's fine because you have the alliteration as opposed to rhyming, which is interesting. But then, like, the victory celebration, it just says victory, and they don't translate that into French, I assume because that's close enough to victoire. Space battle, they don't translate, which seems a little bit weird to me, why they wouldn't. Selling of the droids is changed to la vente des droids, which makes sense, because I guess selling wouldn't work. But the best is the Cantina band.
Okay.
Because Cantina isn't really an English word. But they still decided to call it l'orchestre de la taverne. So that's the orchestra of the tavern.
Oh, wow.
Which I think makes them pretty regal.
Yeah, I like that.
Notice they didn't try to translate Stormtroppers.
No, they didn't. That's the same in every language. And same thing, Rebel Beige, Lightsaber Duel, Leia, Luke, those weren't translated. So it was a pretty uneven amount of things that were translated. I don't know, Scott, if that happens a lot in early items where it's not always uptight, or it is, or...
No, it's that whole translation, that law was kind of a loosey-goosey thing. I remember, kind of, if I can just go off on a tangent past the puzzles to the toys, I was talking to one of the Irwin guys there a number of years ago, like asking about this, because we found a lot of, over the years, especially during the Jedi era, of a lot of American products up here, but with, like, Canadian price tags on them. So we said, well, if you've got this law, how could you push it through? Well, did you not get fined or anything like that? And they said, yeah, but the fine was less than the money that we made off of these things. So yeah, we elected to kind of take the heat, get the little slap on the wrist, but make tons of money over fist there with the English only stuff.
Wow, because when exactly was the law passed?
Oh, that the official act, I think that was like late '60s. It didn't come into law, I think, until like mid '70s. So it would have been ingrained when Star Wars came out. So around 74, 73, something like that.
Right. So it's, I mean, really right around the time Star Wars comes out is when bilingual packaging is enforced. That's amazing that they would just break the law and then pay the fine.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, that was, I guess, sort of a real testament to, like, how much of a hit that Star Wars was in Canada. It's like, well, the money that we would put into having, like, to bilingualize everything and go back and re-update everything, just release the English-only package, and we'll make more money selling this stuff than it would cost us to actually make it bilingual.
Wow. Okay, well, Steve, if you want to talk about food now, you can. That was a lot more fun in language stuff than I thought. Because Scott got to go. If I can get you guys to go on a tangent based on my tangents, we might get one good tangent out of it. So.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start with Scott. Were you ever chased down by the Alpha-Getti Gobbler by any chance?
No, I was not. I never even ate the stuff at all.
Okay.
Terrifying.
What are you talking about, Steve?
Okay, so there was this product from Libby's called Alpha-Getti, which is like SpaghettiOs, that alphabet style. But they did a promotion which involved the puzzles. But before we get to that, Ron included this commercial from 1985 that is just truly terrifying of the Alpha-Getti Gobbler, which, I don't know, there's just something so unsettling about him.
If you want to hang on to your Alpha-Getti, watch out for the Alpha-Getti Gobbler. The Alpha-Getti Gobbler loves to gobble up those delicious little spaghetti letters and wiggly little words. Oh, hey, there he is now. Gobblegetti. So cheesy and tomatoey and so much fun to eat.
You're the Alpha-Getti Gobbler.
Oh, me?
Hey, kids, now there's new Alpha-Getti and yummy chicken sauce.
Watch out for the Alpha-Getti Gobbler. Gobblegetti, gobblegetti, gobblegetti.
Yeah.
How did you describe him, Ron? Like a
giant sea anemone? And that's what he looks like a I don't know, some kind of growth from the bottom of the ocean that's come to life and forced you to eat spaghetti. Oh God, it's really just. I'm looking at it right now with the sound off, and it's just he's got these like disturbing lips, and his eyes move around, and he comes into the kitchen and threatens these kids to eat spaghetti.
Yeah,
and the whole time they're like smiling as though this is a pleasant experience.
Well, that's the thing that's so creepy about it is like he's so physically aggressive, but his voice is so welcoming and friendly.
Gobblegetti, so cheesy and tomatoey and so much fun to eat.
So there's just the discord there just doesn't work. But,
man, the 80s were a strange time, my friend. I just don't really who came up with that, but
yeah.
And also before we even get into that, let's just talk about Alpha-Getti more, Steve, because first of all, it's like spaghetti. What makes spaghetti is its shape. It's
right.
Like you can't actually have SpaghettiOs aren't real either. I mean, spaghetti is just a stick of pasta. So calling it Alpha-Getti doesn't quite work. Also, Alpha-Getti sounds like a planet in Star Wars, or actually more like Battlestar Galactica. Like, oh, he's located somewhere on Alpha-Getti. And then,
no, it's from the Wrath of Khan, as I wrote in the article.
Oh yeah, that's right.
As I was writing it, I kept saying Alpha-Getti. Like, why does that sound familiar? Finally, I figured it out. I was like, that's the system or whatever from the Wrath of Khan.
Right, SETI Alpha versus Alpha-Getti.
Alpha.
And then the final bit was I actually think it sounds like the great American poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti. So I thought that it was like, anyways, these are all of the associations I get. Still alive, by the way, almost 100 years old. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
All right.
So
maybe
that is what
mesmerized by Ricardo Montalban's bare chest looking at this thing here, with this Alpha-Getti. But
great. So that was the show. Good night. No, wait. Why are we talking about Alpha-Getti, Steve?
Well, I think Scott should probably tell the full story here because I think he knows the most. But so Scott, what's the deal with the promotion with the puzzles and Alpha-Getti?
Yeah, so that was one of the few food promotions that we had for that back in '78. But as I quoted Steve Sansweet's article about it from concept to screen to collectible, apparently when Alpha-Getti had in Canada had pitched the promotion, Lucasfilm originally said no, and so the story went was that they tried to convince Lucasfilm to allow them to do it because it was a staple of one of the meals that they served at the Six Kids Hospital in Toronto. So they said, okay, well, you can use it, but you'll have to put the promotion on an equal type of offering that you have, but that's more like nutritious. So I don't know what that one would have been. I've only ever seen it on like the regular Alpha-Getti.
So they probably just went with the bilingual tactic and said, let's just...
You know what happened, right?
What?
You guys know what happened, right?
So Ron's going to tell us what happened when Lucasfilm
saw the Alpha-Getti Gobbler, and they nixed that thing as soon as they saw that.
Yeah, and these wrappers are pretty nice. I mean, you've got the weird Gobbler, and he's looking on the side, and then you see a jigsaw, and it says Star Wars Jigsaw Castet, and on the back they have images of what the puzzles look like and how to get it, and they of course misspell Wookiee. I think at this point we should just accept Wookiee with one E as an accepted spelling.
Yeah, a pre like 79 spelling. Yeah. But
so there's never been any other soup, because if they demanded that it be on a more healthy soup, and that's never appeared, so it probably never existed.
I'm sure it probably did. I don't think they would try to, tempt Lucasfilm by not doing something like that or like holding up their end of the bargain. I just haven't seen it, and I was never a big Alpha-Getti eater when I was a kid, so I know that our family never bought the stuff. So
that's probably good.
I've never seen anything other than this particular label.
Wow.
It's just pretty cool to see a Kenner toy offered on a food product.
Yeah.
Not that many. I mean, the micro collection figures in the mid '80s were offered on C-3PO packages.
That's right.
It's odd because, like the modern day, we don't get too many food promotions up here. But back, in the original trilogy area, especially around the Star Wars era, Canada actually did get a number of different like food-related promotions. One, you remember the Schneiders, the Wieners and the bacon promotion area.
Oh yeah, it's on your website. I saw that.
And then there was another one where...
Wait, I don't think we know about this. Or I don't know about this.
I don't know if I know about that. Yeah.
It was on a little... on packages of Schneiders... going off on a tangent again. But
Go
on
for it.
Schneider's, it's a meat producer here in Canada. And on their packages of hot dogs and bacon... there was these little slips of paper that were folded up on front of the package, or you could have like a little tear-off sheet on the shelf in the stores where you could enter to win a collection of Star Wars items. So it was kind of neat with regard to what you could win. Was like an X-wing fighter, the TIE fighter, but also there were 2 sets of the original 3 packs. The villain set and the android set, as well as I think 2 of the utility belt sets. So I think if you look on my website under the food promotions, you'll see more details on it. But if those particular items today, those are if you had all those original items it's an original packaging, it'd be worth a pretty penny today. I think it's valued like $100.
Before the phone got cut off, and basically what that means is that there is a Star Wars Collector's Archive for Canada, except it's not the Star Wars Collector's Archive. It's Scott's website, which is such an old website that it was before you could name websites things that made any sense. So you're going to want to...
It's a very poor comparator to the Star Wars Collector's Archive.
Well, that's not even that good of a website name, to be honest. I mean, it should be like Rebel Scum. Like, that's a very clear thing. As opposed to, I suppose, like the WCA.S. Yeah. So what's the best way to find your website, Scott?
Just Google Canadian Star Wars Gallery and it'll pop up.
Okay, Canadian Star Wars Gallery. But there is one fun fact about Scott Bradley's website, which is... the first image that pops up whenever you put in like Kenner and some Star Wars figure is almost always from your website. Did you know that, Scott?
No, I had no idea.
It's like I always look like, God, I don't want a Canadian version of it. Why is Scott? Bradley. It's like this weird thing. Is that just me?
What have you done to bribe Google?
Yeah, really. It's a testament to how long it's been around. It's so old, It says, okay, here it is. Real, like some ancient photos from years past.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, Steve, I think is that it for our puzzling talk. We've talked about all the important stuff, like Alpha-Getti is basically the only thing, because if there is actually, I should tell you listeners, there is what's called the curse of the Alpha-Getti, which is once you've heard of Alpha-Getti, the mascot for Canadian SpaghettiOs, you have to tell as many people as you can, or else you will be visited by Alpha-Getti in your nightmares. And
the Getty Gobbler will be after you.
The Getty Gobbler will come after you. So you now have to tell people, everybody you know, stop them on the street and tell them about the Getty Gobbler.
Gobble-Getti, so cheesy and tomatoey and so much fun to eat.
I think those guys who were cut out of the puzzle were probably murdered by the Gobbler.
That's yeah.
Or maybe that's what you look like after you finish eating it.
That's also a possibility.
Pretty much, frowns. Yeah, I mean, I don't have much else on puzzles. I mean, like I said before, I think it's a fun line to collect in that it's not something that costs $1 billion. So I think this is a common refrain for me with these things that that you don't have to just collect action figures which are worth $1 bazillion, or I'm going to buy a hard copy arm for $75,000 or whatever. Like, there's other stuff out there to buy that is interesting. It's not necessarily super expensive. So if you find those items cool, then you know that you can search them out on eBay or whatever and have a good time collecting them.
Yeah, and actually, kind of a fun way to go out on this. So Ron, you know how I'm not great at making plans?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Absolutely.
Well, my life is fairly chaotic, and I have, anyways, lots of things that get tricky. But just this might be fun for podcast listeners who like us as human beings. But for the first time ever, Stephen B. Danley is setting foot in New York State. And he is going to be visiting Ronderley. He's going to be visiting Ron's collection like later this week. And I'm going to be going there with my kids, and we'll all be together hanging out at Ron's. So,
oh, wow, we're totally going to take a picture at that diner. That's what we're going to do.
Yes.
I can sense it coming.
We're
And Scott, if you're free, you're welcome to drive on down, man.
Hey, thanks for the invite. Very tempting.
Yeah.
There's no gazebo nearby, right, Ron? We don't have to.
But I may walk out
with
your corridor of lights.
Yeah. There is a Popeye's chicken, which Skye made us walk to once and take a picture in front of for no particular reason.
That sounds like something he'd do.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I appreciate having us on. I appreciate Scott contributing because his website's definitely the source for Canadian stuff. So he helped me out with that second piece there, and I appreciate you correcting me on my errors. And I just like to say you guys are the Hall and Oates of Star Wars podcasting.
Oh, wow.
I call Crockett.
Yeah, those were fantastic articles, Ron. They were really interesting. A lot of details that I didn't know about the American line. So yeah, it's always a pleasure reading these things.
Thanks, Scott. I'm glad you guys got something out of it. Hopefully other people check it out. And, if you got any other blog topics, Scott, that you want to do, just let me know. We'll get them on there. Always looking for cool blog topics.
With that, I'm going to hit stop because we're supposed to have harsh outros on this, right, Steve?
That's right.
I gave you fair warning. Beware.
Hey.
All right, so that was a good conversation. I cut it off abruptly.
That's our style with these, yeah.
Yeah, that's our style. It was fun mentioning that we're going to be seeing each other. I am going to awkwardly go in and insert really pedantic intros to certain things, just because I was trying to do a thing of circulating the topics more, who starts off a topic, but then I realized I'm the only one who's super willing to make it super boring and just describe things really slowly.
No, it's something it's a blind spot for me. So please do.
Okay, but yeah, like we said, we promised we would talk about the archive party a little bit, Steve.
Yes. Yeah.
It's if you've been following the archive, the Facebook pages, we've been putting up pictures, and I got to see Steve out in L.A., and we'll tell stories of L.A. and why the lightning round questions are changed forever. We'll be telling that story soon. But the main thing is that the archive party is officially set. We have a date. What's the date, Steve?
So it's Thursday, April 11th. Traditional opening night of Celebration.
Right. So what's the 411, Steve?
So we got row 24.
That's the date.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
411. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the thing about Star Wars Celebration. If you're thinking, I might have to miss a day of work or whatever, you want to miss it for the archive party. It is the number one reason to miss something. They're going to be extending it to Monday. Forget that last day. You can blow that off, but you have to come to the party.
Yeah, you got to be there Thursday. So, it's at row 24, which is a cool little old school venue that's just off site from the convention center. It's a short walk, but it looks like a pretty cool place. They seem like awesome people. So, we got a place.
So it's a little underground. It's a little grungy. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like the last parties where we are in a hotel, either
Ballroom.
the official hotel. We're
No,
in a
no ballroom queues.
Yes, no ballroom queues, because the prices on those literally doubled. Okay,
Tripled, almost.
Tripled.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, getting close to triple. Yeah,
right. So it used to be before that we could raise whatever $15,000, and that would pretty much cover it. Now we'd have to raise basically 30 to cover it, which would mean that most of the ticket sales would have gone to just paying for the damn thing.
Right.
So we had to find another option. Jason Thomas is a godsend, and he did a lot of legwork, and he found this place. And it is a 10-minute walk from the venue, and that's kind of a bummer. And you're all sitting there saying, "Oh, it's a bummer. It's a 10-minute walk from the venue." Except it's going to be way better because there's no limits on catering. And the thing about putting on these parties is, that scene in Big Lebowski, Steve, where Donnie dies and they're trying to find the place to put his remains after cremating him.
Yes.
And what's the line? Just because we're mourning doesn't mean we're saps.
It is our most modestly priced receptacle.
Well, can you just,
$180? They range up to $3,000.
Can't we just rent it from you? Yeah.
So this is a mortuary, not a rental house.
We're scattering them in ashes. But just because we're bereaved doesn't make us saps!
Sir, please lower your voices.
Man, don't you have, something else we can put them in?
That is our most modestly priced receptacle.
They put you over a barrel because they say you can't bring any other food, so you have to get our little shrimp poppers and canapes and mini tacos and sliders and all of this unsatisfying food. And everyone can buy beer and wine for $7 a glass. Because we're having it a literally 10-minute walk, which the other one, Avenue Q, whatever it was a 10-minute walk from the convention.
Exactly.
It was still a part of the convention area, so it didn't feel like a walk.
Yeah.
With that, we were able to get a place that has an open wine and beer bar.
Yes.
So with the price of admission, and we're going to be determining the price soon, all the money goes to cats and dogs, so we're going to make it as expensive as we think you guys are willing to pay. Should I cut that out, Steve? No, I'm going to leave it in, you cheapskates. You get as much wine and beer as you can drink. So, build that into your ticket. Build that into your price, because if you were going to buy 2 or 3 drinks, that was going to be $25-$30. Already you're saving that. And then the food, Steve. I'm not going to contribute that much to this party, except this idea that I had.
This was a major win here. So we're going to Chicago. So what kind of food do we have to have?
I said, well, let's just get Giordano's deep dish pizza,
and not just a few of them, right?
No, we're getting 100 pizzas. Okay, you are not going to get hungry at our party. 100 United States pizzas. We might even get more than 100. 100 minimum. And for the price of 120 pizzas, will seriously be the same price as those little tiny, scallops, not even scallops wrapped in bacon. They'd be like a Brussels sprout wrapped in bacon, or something you sort of like. As much beer...
Pigs in a blanket.
Yes. As much beer, pizza, and wine as you can drink at this party in a super hip place. So we'll be announcing more with what the events will be. How's it going for the sponsorship, Steve?
Great. We got an insane response. All the sponsorship spots are full. So thank you guys all so much for getting right on it. It was overwhelming, but in a really good way. So
So the first time we struggled to get 20 sponsors. We had to beg, and it cost not much. Under $200 the first time, I think, to be a sponsor. And we had to really beg, and people didn't like the idea because they weren't going to get any money back. It wasn't like other things that you sponsored. There was no guarantee of anything. It was just a truly altruistic thing. And then the next time we raised the price a little bit and had more sponsors. The next time a little bit, and then this time it was really a lot of money, and 48 people signed up within a day. It was absolutely crazy. So you guys have been listening to us. I think you know how important the party is. It's the 4th one. I mean, that's a real thing, and we're keeping it going.
Yeah, no, it's coming together. Always a little bit under the gun, but that's just how we do these things. So
it is. Yeah, we're getting all the themes, and we're planning things out, and we've got a lot of really good ideas. So we will be announcing the tickets when they go on sale in the next couple months.
Right.
So don't feel panicked if you don't have a ticket yet. Once again, we're going to do the thing where the more expensive tickets are going to be sold first, so that the cheapskates have a worse chance of getting in. It's definitely going to sell out because we have less availability than last time.
I'd say that's definitely something that you don't want to slack off on because it's.
I don't want to be a jerk, but if I were you, I would be slightly anxious about getting a ticket. So, keep that in mind. All right. Well, good. Well, we're still not going to have a fancy ending to this, Steve, except to say that I will see you at the end of the week, and hopefully I'll have edited this by now, but I don't know.
we never quite know, but hey, either way, it's going to work out, so...
Viens petite fille dans mon comic strip,